When we forget someone, it's as if they vanish into thin air. Not because they didn't matter, but someone made sure we ignored them. There was a time when she was ubiquitous, beaming on his arm at premieres and stealing hearts on TV. Right now, time passed, her fame faded, and no one would notice if her picture appeared in a headline once in a while. But there's still a missing piece to her story, like a phrase that echoes in the background. No one will be applauding if her name is brought up today. It makes people feel confused and maybe guilty. How did that happen? She vanished without a trace. Why is it even painful to ask, though? The credits roll at the end of several stories. Some are gradually buried until only a question is left. How can someone who is always there suddenly vanish? His early life and career. Clint Eastwood didn't grow up famous. His 11-pound birth weight earned him the nickname Samson from the medical personnel at the San Francisco hospital where he was born in 1930. He bounced around a bit as a kid in California, but he finally landed in Piedmont, a wealthy area with tree-lined avenues and quiet neighborhoods. Clint was just a shy, lanky boy at the time, trying to make it in the world the way everyone else did. Far from being an aspiring Hollywood star, he worked as a lifeguard and a grocery shop clerk after school. A stint in front of the camera seemed out of the question, yet opportunities present themselves in the most unexpected ways. Something unexpected happened while Clint was a soldier stationed at Fort or Chuck Hill. A man with Hollywood ties and past acquaintances of Clint's ran across him once more. Even though Clint isn't quite there yet, he'll see promise in him just by being around him. He put Clint in touch with Irving Glassberg, a cameraman at Universal Studios, who set up an audition. Things did not go according to plan during the first audition. Arthur Lubin, the film's director, admired Clint for his stature and rugged good looks, but felt he needed to work on his acting. Still, Lubin was impressed enough to give him a $100 weekly contract and tell him to take acting classes if he wanted to be a real actor. Thank you, Clint. It wasn't easy at first. An oddity that remained throughout his career was his discomfort and stiffness in front of the camera. He also had a habit of grinding his teeth when he said his lines. Something about him, though, was undeniable, even after these early blunders. His calm, unwavering presence might have been the reason. It might have been the subtle abrasiveness he exuded effortlessly. At long last, he broke through in the late 1950s with the hit TV show Rawhide. Rowdy Yates was a cowboy who started getting a lot of attention from people. The show's long run gave Clint the exposure and experience he needed. That's where it all began. Understated and unremarkable. Someone whose rise had been slow and steady would finally become known. Fame didn't come knocking on Clint Eastwood's door. Carefully and silently, he built it. Private life. Not only did Clint Eastwood build a Hollywood career that lasted decades, but he also made many difficult personal choices during his life, especially in the realm of love. Many ladies crossed his path during his life, some on an occasional basis, and others on a more significant one. Although some of the relationships did continue into the next season, they were often under the radar and never really made an appearance. Physical education teacher Margaret Neville Johnson was his first wife. They met on a blind date. In 1953, she became his wife. However, had extramarital affairs both before and during the marriage. Lori, his adopted daughter, was born to him in 1954 from one of his early affairs. Information regarding her mother was kept private, and Clint seldom brought it up. Even though Clint was married to Johnson, he had another long-term affair with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. Kimber was born in 1964 to that couple, and their relationship continued from 1959 to 1973. Clint and Tunis were close for a long time until Tunis died in 2023, even though the strangeness of their circumstances should have driven them apart. Later in life, Clint and Johnson welcomed a son, Kyle, in 1968, and a daughter, Allison, in 1972. Although unusual, the marriage lasted decades. Their 1984 divorce came after Johnson seemed to tolerate Clint's way of life. Afterwards, his marriages continued to raise eyebrows. Scott was born in 1986, and Catherine was born in 1988 to Clint through an unrecognized romance with flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves. Back then, nobody knew about the affair, while the children were technically without a father figure for a while. Still, they came to see Clint as their biological father, and Scott even began to mimic his behavior. Francesco was born to Clint and actress Frances Fisher in 1993 during their relationship in the 1990s. After that, he wed Dina Ruiz, a television news anchor, for a second time in 1996. Additionally that year, they welcomed a daughter, Morgan, into the world. They were married for almost 20 years before divorcing in 2014. In interviews, Clint Eastwood rarely talks about his family. Although he is comfortable with the spotlight, he has said that his children did not desire it. Even though Clint is a household figure in Hollywood, much of his personal life, its layers, complexity, and largely undisclosed details, remains shrouded in mystery. Disagreement behind the scenes. The 2008 public feud between cinematic giants Spike Lee and Clint Eastwood ignited passionate debates about race, historical accuracy, and cinematic representation. It all began when Lee voiced his disapproval of two of Clint Eastwood's 2006 war films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, which had received high critical praise. Although Eastwood's skill was never questioned, Lee voiced his disapproval of what he saw as a glaring absence of black soldiers. During that year's Cannes Film Festival, Lee made his thoughts known, recognized for his uncompromising views on race and storytelling. It was his contention that Eastwood had omitted the experiences of black Marines from WWI's canon. Lee stated that many African Americans fought and died in Iwo Jima, implying that their sacrifice would have been recognized with even a little representation. In responding, Eastwood didn't hold back. "A man like him should keep his mouth shut," he publicly retorted. He defended his films by claiming they were based on real events, namely the white servicemen's hoisting of the flag on Mount Suribachi. While the controversy persisted, Eastwood maintained that it would be unfair to introduce black people to settings where they had never been before. Almost instantly, the news outlets began covering the story. The argument that filmmakers should show the bigger picture rather than just selected scenes was advanced by several who sided with Lee. Others rose to the occasion to support Eastwood's mission, argue that narrative clarity is achieved by creative liberty and attention on specific occurrences. The clash between the two directors, however, was about more than just movies. A broader cultural phenomenon emerged from it. It brought up an old argument from the Hollywood scene. Who gets to recount the past? Whose narratives are omitted? The discussion made viewers question the veracity of screen content and the gaps that often go unnoticed. The two men were resolute in their pursuit of professional success, notwithstanding the conflict. Many saw Lee's release of Miracle at St. Anna, a World War II film depicting African-American soldiers, the same year as a reaction to the debate. Contrarily, Eastwood continued making films based on true historical events while defending his choices. The feud, looking back, wasn't about two directors with different views. The way we perceive the past was essential. Both the words and the symbolism of the dispute caused a ruffle in the feathers. It went on to say that stories aren't always neutral, and that the narrator can have as much of an impact as the story itself. The reaction to the scene, that Richard Jewell's most controversial. The film industry was engulfed in heated debates on race, historical accuracy, and screen representation in 2008 when a public feud between Clint Eastwood and Spike Lee broke out. It all began in 2006, when Lee voiced his disapproval of Clint Eastwood's two critically acclaimed military films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. Lee griped about what he saw as a glaring error, but Eastwood's filmmaking chops were never in question. Nobody from the Black Army Corps was there. Lee made his intentions clear during the Cannes Film Festival that year, known for his unwavering views on race and story. He thought Eastwood had completely forgotten about the Black Marines of World War II. Lee made the implication that even a symbolic depiction would have acknowledged the sacrifices made by the African Americans who fought and died in Iwo Jima. When asked to clarify, Eastwood was quite direct. Someone with his level of arrogance ought to keep his mouth shut, he openly retorted. The famous flag hoisting on Mount Suribachi, which included only white personnel, was one of the documented incidents that he used to justify his decision to relocate. It would be wrong for Eastwood to introduce black characters where none existed historically. However, the uproar continued. Quickly, word spread throughout the media. Filmmakers have a responsibility to portray the bigger picture, not just isolated incidents, according to some critics who agreed with Lee. A number of people spoke out in support of Eastwood's artistic vision, arguing that focus and creative freedom allow for faithful storytelling. However, film was only one aspect of the underlying issue between the two filmmakers, becoming into a more significant cultural phenomenon. It brought to light an old Hollywood mystery: whose history gets told and whose gets ignored. Viewers were made to reflect more on what they were seeing on screen and the gaps that went unnoticed as a result of the discussion. Despite the tense atmosphere, both men persisted in their professional endeavors. In the same year, Lee released Miracle at St. Anna, a World War II film about black soldiers, which the majority of people took as his direct response to the scandal. Eastwood, on the other hand, stuck to making films that were based on true stories, even though he was firm about them. Looking back, the rivalry was about more than just two directors having different opinions. It was about our perspective on the past. It wasn't only the words that made the argument tremble. The ideas they represented did as well. It served as a sobering reminder that history isn't always objective and that the narrator can make all the difference. The love stories untold by Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood's dignified cinematic demeanor belies a complicated history of secret relationships, hidden paternity, and psychological trauma that affected many women in his life. His private life was a story of betrayal, adultery, and deceit, in contrast to the world's adoration of his macho suaveness and silent Western heroes. The tragic story revolved around Roxanne Tunis, a stunt woman who worked on the set of Rawhide, who Clint secretly wed for 14 years while still married to Maggie Johnson, his first wife. Their romance was more than just a passing fancy. It went on for more than 10 years, unseen by everyone, including Maggie. Kimber, Clint's daughter, was born to Roxanne in 1964. Amazingly, Clint didn't find out she was born until nearly a year after the fact. After he did, he obscured his knowledge of her life, seeing her only from time to time, as though she were an enigma to be contained rather than a beloved kid. However, there were other hidden chapters in his past as well. Clint Eastwood fathered a total of 8 children: Morgan, Allison, Kimber, Scott, Catherine, Francesca, Kyle, and Kimber, with no less than 6 women. A number of the offspring were born into the family at the same time. Basically, Clint was seeing more than one woman at the same time, and he was either oblivious to or actively trying to hide his relationships from each of them, abandoned to endure the treachery in silence. After wondering about their biological father for years, several of them, like Lori, were adopted and only reconnected with Eastwood decades later. Scott and Francesca are 2 examples of the many children who grew up in broken families, carrying on their famous father's name without always feeling his love and care. Many of his offspring did not or only gradually gain public renown. Some people didn't exist until tabloids exposed the truth, subjecting the children and mothers to the intense scrutiny as they faced the emotional devastation. Behind closed doors, Clint's cheating and the creation of secret families while she was away crushed Maggie Johnson, the faithful wife who had supported him for years. One of Hollywood's most famous names has had their honor tarnished by this story. Behind the scenes, Clint Eastwood had a troubled family history of hidden children, broken promises, and women who silently carried the wounds he had inflicted. He had also left behind a legacy of cinematic greatness: the ladies who were victims of Clint Eastwood's abuse. Many people see Clint Eastwood as the archetypal movie tough guy, but his real-life anecdotes paint a darker picture. Fans gush about his renowned cinematic career and charming personality, but rumors about his relationships with his closest girlfriends have been circulating. He seems to be haunted by a reality that is extremely different from his magnetism and success. Although Eastwood and Maggie Johnson were married for many years, their union was anything but idyllic. One horrific incident from Clint's alleged physical abuse of Maggie sticks out in a memoir-style narrative that the Irish Independent reported. According to the article, Eastwood once threw her across the bathroom and caused her to fall into a tub during an aggressive quarrel. This happened more than once. It allegedly symbolizes a history of aggressive behavior and deep-seated animosity between them. Think about the pain and terror Maggie went through while her husband was feted as a hero around the world. It was far from over, though. Clint Eastwood's relationship with Sandra Locke, an actress, was very public for over 10 years. Behind the scenes, though, what seemed like a power couple on the surface transformed into something far worse. Locke accused Eastwood of being emotionally abusive, manipulative, and domineering in multiple public remarks. While they were dating, she said he forced her to have an abortion twice and then pushed her to obtain a tubal ligation, rendering her sterile. According to Locke, she went through with these drastic treatments not because she wanted to, but because her husband Clint was against having more children. After the fact, Locke revealed in her writings that she had dreams of starting a family, but that they were crushed by the weight of expectations. She mentioned that she felt confined. She described feeling gaslight and helpless as she described how Eastwood used his influence and power to restrain her during her effort to flee. According to her, once their relationship ended, Eastwood acted cruelly by allegedly locking her out of the property they shared. Their legal disputes dragged on for a long time. Despite Eastwood's denial of the claims of coercion, her reputation is stained by the personal pain that Locke made public. Those are not the tales of heartbreaking breakups. Stories depicting acts of violence, power, and dominance from females who formerly fawned over a man the entire world held in high esteem. These stories are a sobering reminder that being famous can mask a lot, and that sometimes the most disturbing truths are hidden from view. When Sandra met Clint, while filming The Outlaw Josie Wales in the fall of 1975, Sandra Locke and Clint Eastwood started to develop romantic feelings for each other. Nothing had come of their first meeting, which had taken place when Locke had tried out for a part in Eastwood's Breezy, until they ran into the other again in Page, Arizona. They were instantly attracted to each other. The two of us were simply instantly attracted to each other, as Locke would later recall in a documentary. They had sex at the end of their first date, setting the stage for one of the most intense and startling romances in Hollywood history. Maggie Johnson was still Eastwood's wife at that time. However, according to every source, he and his wife had been emotionally distant for a long time. Their open marriage was well known among Hollywood elites, and he didn't spend much time at Johnson's Pebble Beach mansion. Locke heard Eastwood sing a song he wrote for her called "She Made Me Monogamous," while he confessed to her that he had never experienced love before. Like everyone else, Locke had options. Despite the advances from screenwriter Philip Kaufman, she chose to be with Eastwood. His Carmel and Sherman Oaks homes, as well as his rented San Francisco and Tiburon residences, became frequent vacation spots for the couple. A Bel Air property on Stradella Road, which would be forever linked to them, was subsequently rented by them. Their affair would remain secret until 1977, but in the years leading up to that point, they were a hot and steamy couple experiencing all the highs and lows of a passionate love affair. Locke often remarked that she had never experienced such intense affection. It was an incredibly beautiful beginning. Even then, a firestorm ensued. The fight for justice his ex-wife faced. In real life and on screen, Sandra Locke was Clint Eastwood's partner for a long time. However, she would lose more than simply love when the storm of legal drama that terminated their 13-year relationship hit. While developing Impulse in April 1989, Locke received a devastating letter. The attorneys representing Clint had changed the Locke's address on their Bel Air property, gathered all of her belongings, and then denied her access. Locke was taken aback by the letter, which was written with an icy tone to be with Mrs. Gordon Anderson. Reading it caused her to pass out. Without delay, she initiated a palimony suit against Eastwood, alleging wiretapping, mental suffering, forced eviction, and financial abandonment. Locke was fighting for more than just financial support. Decades of psychological manipulation had left her fighting for respect and dignity. Her pursuit of justice and recompense in court made the case a major public spectacle. Eastwood discreetly ended the affair after 19 long months. Not only did Warner Brothers offer Locke a $1.5 million development deal, but they also gave him 2 mansions and $450,000 in cash. It appeared like a win until the hard reality set in, but the contract was supposed to help her transition from actress to director. Locke approached Warner Brothers with almost 30 screenplay concepts between 1990 and 1993. Nothing worked. No matter how competent or successful she was, the door would not budge. It would come to light later on that Eastwood had secretly funded the studio agreement and that its purpose was never to advance her career. She saw it as an attempt to silence her and avoid further legal trouble. She thought it was all in her head. In 1996, Locke filed a new lawsuit, this one alleging fraud. She said the development deal was all an effort to silence her and prevent her career from advancing. Later on, an internal affidavit confirmed her story, proving that Warner had no intention of using her work. Eastwood maintained his innocence, but Locke made it clear that money wasn't the issue in her fight. Her struggle revolved around reclaiming her voice. She clarified that money was never the issue. "I have to stand up for my rights as a professional." Unfortunately, it was too late. Her career was never the same. The woman who was on the verge of becoming a famous director and had received an Oscar nomination faded into oblivion. Her story serves as a sobering reminder of the silent struggle and how power can stifle even Hollywood's most brilliant minds. Golden Girl Sandra Locke shone brightly in the 70s and 80s on screen. Nevertheless, concealed underneath that mesmerizing grin, a lady whose life crumbled under the weight of hidden anguish lurked. Instead of vanishing into thin air, she sank beneath the weight of anguish and betrayal, to say nothing of her unreliable physical self. Locke received her breast cancer diagnosis in 1990. Tragically, it added to the emotional wounds she had sustained throughout her life, many of which stemmed from her rocky relationship with Clint Eastwood. The cancer's insistence for a double mastectomy, an emotionally and physically taxing procedure, only added insult to injury. Regardless, she persisted. She fought silently. She did not give in to pity when she got over it. Remaining quiet, unmoved, and strong, she persevered. However, cancer has a pitiful propensity to return. Yes, it accomplished that. Not just in the breast this time. It had been silent, slow, and deadly as it had made its way to her bones. Over time, her health gradually declined. According to her friends, she suffered from a slow but steady decline in health, and reports of other illnesses also spread. A persistent state of lethargy, anemia, and difficulty breathing. The difficulty level increased daily. Breathing becoming more challenging with each passing moment, yet there has been no major or public announcement. Sandra never invited anyone to share in her pain. She passed away at her Los Angeles home on November 3rd, 2018. And why is that? Her battles with bone and breast cancer led to her cardiac arrest. No one cared that she was 74 years old in this celebrity-obsessed, instant news society. No, I can't wait that long. Even though her death was reported to the authorities, the public was unaware of it until around the middle of December. Donations did not flood in. Very little backlash on social media. The news was leaked out by Radar Online in what appeared to be a whisper rather than a headline. Clint Eastwood never officially acknowledged her death by the time his film The Mule was out. Death was more than just the end for her. A deletion had occurred. No one in the industry expressed their sorrow or paid tribute on television. Every year, she was left out of the Oscars' touching in memoriam sequence that paid tribute to the deceased. In death, she was rendered invisible, just as she had been in her latter years. Her longtime companion and de facto legal spouse, Gordon Anderson, who she had supported monetarily and emotionally throughout her life, was given her ashes. In the end, she bequeathed her nearly $20 million inheritance to him, giving the one person who had stuck by her something to hold on to. However, the media blackout, the questions that went unanswered, and the friends who said nothing appeared callous. There were those who doubted she had even requested it. Maybe she was afraid everyone would see her weak spot. Maybe she preferred to pass away quietly. Or maybe she really believed no one would care after all the pain she had endured. Clint Eastwood evolved subtly at 95 years of age. Clint Eastwood is still not ready to call it quits at the age of 95. One thing was crystal clear to fans, even as they feared that Juror Number 2, Eastwood's 2024 release, would be his last as a director. He has a long way to go. In recent interviews, Eastwood reaffirmed his belief that one's creative abilities do not diminish with age and that he still has many stories to tell. Although Eastwood has been relatively quiet recently, he was photographed at Carmel by the Sea, where he owns the lovely Mission Ranch and often stays. Christina Sandera, his lifelong companion, died in July of 2024, months before the sighting. Eastwood quietly withdrew from public view for a period to grieve in solitude following the death. Despite the emotional toll, Eastwood has kept his mental and physical strength. To keep his energy levels up, he supposedly meditates and does yoga in addition to exercising with golf and walking and following a vegetarian diet. Recent quotes from his son Scott Eastwood indicate that he is doing well and remains the same determined, down-to-earth individual as his father. Rumor has it that Clint is supposedly already hard at work on a new film. Still going strong at 95 years old, he's arguing that Hollywood should stop focusing on remakes and franchises and start crafting bold, original stories. In the company of Earth, loved ones, and the legacy he worked so hard to build over the years, Clint Eastwood is currently enjoying life in his California home. He isn't exactly aiming for stardom, but that doesn't mean he's finished yet. The new chapter of Eastwood's illustrious career is being written with the same penchant and dogged determination as before. Sandra Locke's life is perfect in every way, tragically clever, intricate, and Hollywood scripted. She transcended her roles in film and her relationship with Clint Eastwood. She defied the system's attempts to quiet her by loving profoundly, creating fearlessly, and fighting back. Sandra maintained an air of quiet dignity throughout her career, from her early days as an Oscar-nominated actress to the years she fought heartbreaking court battles. Her impact on those who paid attention was profound, yet it never garnered widespread recognition. Her lifelong voice was just as eerie as her subsequent quiet and passing. A name on a death certificate and an obvious absence from the Academy's in memoriam. No public tributes, no moving eulogies. Once again, it seemed like the world was attempting to obliterate her. Not only will her films with Clint Eastwood live on, but so will her bravery in standing up for herself, demanding respect, and holding powerful men to account at a time when few women had the guts to do so. She decided not to utter a word despite being sick, in agony, betrayed, and devastated. She slipped away as silently as she had spent her last years. However, that is no excuse for us to disregard her. In a field where women who speak out are seldom forgiven, Sandra Locke stood as a symbol of defiance. She was weak yet fierce, wounded yet unfazed. Although Clint Eastwood was a legend, Sandra was the story's heart and soul. Maybe her most resounding comment was delivered in that final moment of peaceful absence. She had arrived. What was important was her. It is fitting to commemorate her story. You are not alone if this tale affected you. Sandra Locke's truth should be remembered because her life was rich with skill, suffering, and resilience. Please share your thoughts below. In your opinion, Did she ever receive the justice that was due to her? Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell symbol to never miss an upload if you want more untold Hollywood stories like this video. No star is without a backstory, so thank you for tuning in.